Imagine waking up one day to a silent, invisible tax on your mind. You go to make a simple decision: what to eat, what to read, what to think about a news story, and you feel a slight, almost imperceptible resistance. It's easier to choose the prepackaged meal of thought, the one that's brightly labeled and emotionally satisfying. It feels more comfortable to slot into the prefabricated opinion, to laugh at the pre-approved joke, to scroll past the complex article in favor of the viral meme. Now, imagine this isn't a one-day phenomenon. Imagine this resistance has been there for years, slowly, inexorably thickening. Your attention span, once a sharp blade capable of carving through dense forests of information, has been gently worn down into a spoon, good only for scooping up whatever soft, easily digestible gruel is placed in front of it. Your curiosity, which once burned with a fierce, questioning flame, has been banked to a pilot light. Just enough to keep the system running, but not enough to generate any real heat or light of its own. You are not in pain. In fact, you are largely comfortable. You are entertained. You are connected. You are informed. But a quiet, nagging voice in the deepest chamber of your consciousness whispers a single, terrifying question. When was the last time you had a thought that was truly, authentically, uncomfortably your own? We live in a golden age of accessible knowledge. The entirety of human thought, from the ancient Vedas to the latest peer-reviewed scientific papers, is, in theory, a few clicks away. We have built a ladder to the stars, yet we voluntarily remain in the basement, entranced by the flickering shadows we ourselves cast on the wall. This is the central paradox of our time. We are surrounded by the tools for unprecedented intellectual and spiritual elevation, yet we are culturally and psychologically sliding into a state of voluntary, celebrated stupidity. This is not the stupidity of low intelligence. This is something far more insidious, far more dangerous. This is a cultivated stupidity. A preferred stupidity. It is the stupidity of the well-educated person who only consumes content that confirms their biases. The stupidity of the professional who is an expert in one narrow field but is utterly incapable of critical thought outside of it. The stupidity of choosing the emotional satisfaction of a hot take over the difficult, nuanced work of understanding a complex truth. Why? Why does our world not just tolerate this, but actively seem to love it? Why are the profound, the complex, and the nuanced so often sidelined, while the simplistic, the dogmatic, and the sensational are amplified, monetized, and celebrated? Why does it feel like the very architecture of our modern world, from its algorithms to its economies to its social structures, is not just accommodating a decline in depth, but is actively engineering it? What if this dumbing down isn't an accidental byproduct of our technology or culture, but a feature of it? What hidden force profits from your intellectual slumber? What part of your own psyche conspires in this quiet betrayal of your potential? The comfort you feel is not safety. It is the comfort of the anesthesia before the surgery you didn't consent to. And the procedure is already underway. The first cut was the surrender of your attention. The second was the outsourcing of your judgment. The third, and most final, will be the erasure of your ability to even perceive what has been taken from you. This is not a lecture. This is a warning and a summons. The world you take for granted is feeding on a part of you it convinced you was worthless. To understand how, and to discover what you must do to reclaim it, we must first peel back the surface of our reality and stare into the hidden problem festering beneath. The problem is not a simple virus with a single origin. It is a perfect storm. a symbiotic convergence of the deepest flaws in our psychology and the most efficient structures of our modern systems. To believe it is merely about social media or politics is to mistake a symptom for the disease. The disease is epistemological. It is about how we know what we know, and more importantly, how we decide what is worth knowing. At the individual level, our own minds are complicit. The cognitive miser, a concept in psychology, describes the brain's inherent tendency to default to the least mentally demanding path. Thinking deeply, critically, analytically, philosophically is calorically expensive. It is neurological work. Confronting ambiguity, holding contradictory ideas in your mind, and challenging your own beliefs is psychologically painful. It triggers cognitive dissonance, a state of mental discomfort we are hardwired to avoid. Our world has become a giant, all-you-can-eat buffet for the cognitive miser. It offers an endless supply of pre-digested conclusions, tribe-affirming narratives, and emotionally charged simplifications that require zero metabolic effort to consume. You are not thinking less because you are lazy. You are thinking less because an entire economy has been built to make not thinking the path of least resistance. It is a physiological trap disguised as a cultural choice, but this is only the soil. The seeds were planted by deeper philosophical shifts. Friedrich Nietzsche, with his terrifying prescience, saw the dawn of this age not in technology, but in the spirit. He warned of the last man, the creature who blinks and says, "What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star?" The last man has made everything small, has traded aspiration for comfort, and has declared, "We have invented happiness." This is the spiritual endpoint of cultivated stupidity, a society that has eliminated the struggle for greatness and replaced it with the pursuit of pleasant distractions, a world where the question of, "What does it mean to live a good life?" is supplanted by the algorithm's query, "What will keep you scrolling?" This is where the hidden force reveals its first major mechanism, the hedonic treadmill of distraction. We are trapped in a cycle of seeking fleeting pleasures, likes, shares, the dopamine hit of a new notification, to avoid the more profound, and often more painful, pursuit of meaning. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, a pessimist who nonetheless saw with brutal clarity, described life as a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. We frantically run from pain, only to find ourselves in the arms of boredom, and then we seek new distractions to escape that. Our modern world is a supercharged engine for this very cycle, offering an infinite scroll of escape hatches from the existential void. Yet, there is a second, even more insidious mechanism at play, one identified by the psychoanalyst Carl Jung. He spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, and refuse to acknowledge because they are too painful, too shameful, or too threatening to our conscious identity. A culture that loves stupidity is a culture that collectively refuses to face its shadow. We outsource our shadow. We project our own capacity for hatred onto political opponents, our own ignorance onto uneducated others, our own anxieties onto nebulous global threats. To truly think, to truly engage in introspection, would be to shine a light into this darkness within ourselves. It is far easier and more profitable for the systems that govern us to keep that light turned off and to let us point fingers at the shadows we cast on others. This is the Great Alliance. Your inner cognitive miser, seeking ease, partners perfectly with the systemic architects who profit from your inattention. Your Jungian shadow, which you fear to confront, is a gold mine for those who can sell you scapegoats and simple villains. Your Nietzschean tendency towards last man comfort is the bedrock of a consumer society that requires you to want more, but not to be more. The systems did not create these weaknesses. They found them, like fault lines in the bedrock of the human soul, and they have been systematically widening them, injecting them with high-pressure solvents of distraction and outrage, until the entire structure of the self is primed to fracture. They have commodified your avoidance. They have monetized your boredom. They have institutionalized your fear of the dark within. The tension is no longer just intellectual. It is existential. You are being gently, persuasively, and entertainingly hollowed out. The scaffolding is being removed, piece by piece, and you are being told you are flying, when in truth, you are in freefall. But to see the true consequence of this, we must look not just at the hollowing of the self, but at the world this hollowed-out self is building around us. The unseen consequences are already here, shaping your reality in ways you have likely felt but never quite named. The hollowing does not remain a private affair, a quiet shame in the secret chambers of the self. A hollowed-out person builds a hollowed-out world. The consequences of this cultivated stupidity are not looming on the horizon. They are the very air we breathe, the water we swim in. They have seeped into the foundations of our relationships, our politics, and our sense of reality, creating a world that is increasingly surreal, unmanageable, and, strangely, cheap. The most immediate casualty is language itself. Language is the tool with which we carve reality, the loom on which we weave shared understanding. But under the tyranny of stupidity, language is debased. It becomes a blunt instrument, not a precision tool. Nuance is sandblasted away. Words become empty vessels, filled not with meaning, but with tribal allegiance and emotional charge. Freedom no longer signifies a complex philosophical ideal involving responsibility and sacrifice. It becomes a slogan on a bumper sticker, a weapon to brandish against a mask mandate. Justice is stripped of its blindfold and scales, reduced to a hashtag, a signal of virtue without the demanding work of building equitable systems. This corruption of language creates a terrifying epistemological crisis. We no longer agree on what is true because we no longer agree on the fundamental definitions of the words we use to describe truth. We are left with a society shouting at itself in a language that has lost its meaning. A Tower of Babel, not of different tongues, but of the same words meaning entirely different things. Communication, the very bridge between consciousnesses, collapses. You are left isolated in your own semantic bubble, convinced of your own righteousness, and bewildered by the irrationality of everyone else. This fracture radiates outward, creating what can only be described as the hyper-reality of the simulacra. The philosopher Jean Baudrillard argued that we have entered an age where the map precedes the territory. The representation, the news story, the social media post, the political ad, is no longer a reflection of a real thing. It becomes the real thing. We no longer argue about events. We argue about the narratives about the events. We form relationships not with people, but with the curated avatars they present online. We consume news not to understand the world, but to have our pre-existing model of the world confirmed and dramatized. In this hyper-reality, the stupid, simplified version of an event is more real than the complex, messy truth of the event itself because it is more widely distributed, more emotionally resonant, and more easily integrated into our existing narrative frameworks. The consequence is a collective dissociation. We are losing the capacity to engage with the raw, unmediated, and often inconvenient texture of reality. We prefer the comfort of the simulation, even as it starves our souls of genuine connection and unvarnished truth. And what grows in the soil of corrupted language and a simulated reality? A new and utterly bizarre form of social trust that has been inverted. We still have trust, but it is no longer placed in institutions, experts, or even in the evidence of our own senses if it contradicts the narrative of our tribe. Instead, trust is placed in the feeling of authenticity. The influencer who keeps it real, the politician who tells it like it is, the conspiracy theory that they don't want you to know. This is a trust based not on competence, track record, or verifiable fact, but on emotional resonance and perceived rebellion. This is the ultimate triumph of the system that loves stupidity. It has made you distrust the very mechanisms, science, journalism, reasoned debate, that could help you see the trap, and has redirected your trust towards the entertainers, the grifters, and the algorithms that keep you docile and engaged. You are a prisoner who has come to love the walls and to distrust anyone who points out the open gate. The consequence is a profound and creeping loneliness. You are surrounded by people, yet you are unable to connect on a level of shared, verifiable reality. You are constantly informed, yet you feel a deep, gnawing ignorance about what is truly happening. You have more friends than ever, yet you have never felt more misunderstood. This is the world the cultivated stupidity has built. A gilded cage of simulated connection and actual isolation, of performative outrage and genuine apathy, of infinite information and zero wisdom. But this is not the end of the story. To see the cage is the first step toward finding the key. The rebellion does not begin with changing the world, but with a radical, counterintuitive, and deeply personal act of reclamation within the one mind they cannot fully control, your own. The realization of your predicament can feel paralyzing. The systems are vast, the psychological hooks are deep, and the current pulls relentlessly towards the easy, the shallow, the stupid. To even contemplate rebellion seems like a fantasy, the equivalent of a single neuron declaring independence from the brain. But this is the final, most seductive lie the system tells you, that you are powerless. The rebellion does not begin with a protest sign or a social media post. It does not require you to dismantle a tech giant or reform the education system. It begins with a single, radical, and profoundly subversive act: the reclamation of your attention. Your attention is not just your focus. It is the rudder of your consciousness, the currency of your soul. It is the one thing you truly own that you have been tricked into giving away for free. The philosopher William James stated, "My experience is what I agree to attend to." They have been attending for you, steering your experience toward their profitable ends. To take it back is the first and most critical act of war. This is not merely digital detox. That is a temporary retreat. The rebellion is a permanent reorientation. It is to become a connoisseur of your own mind, to taste your thoughts and ask, does this nourish me? Does this come from me, or was it placed here? It is to actively curate your inner world with the same ruthless selectivity a master gardener shows their plot. You must weed out the invasive species of hot takes, viral outrage, and algorithmic suggestions. You must plant, instead, the slow-growing seeds of deep focus, challenging literature, and prolonged, unstructured contemplation. This is what the psychologist Viktor Frankl, drawing from his hellish experiences in the concentration camps, identified as the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, even when your body is imprisoned, your attention can be directed inward toward meaning, toward a thought that is yours and yours alone. The second front in this rebellion is the deliberate cultivation of cognitive courage. This is the counterintuitive willingness to seek out discomfort, to entertain ideas that threaten your worldview, and to befriend complexity. It is the active practice of holding two opposing truths in your mind without rushing to resolve the tension. The world is not binary. It is a spectrum of grays, a tapestry of contradictions. The simplified, stupid version of the world is a comfort blanket for a frightened child. The adult mind must learn to find its home in the storm of ambiguity. This means reading the book by the author you despise. It means having a conversation with someone from a diametrically opposed tribe with the sole intention of understanding their worldview, not of defeating them. It means looking at a piece of art that confuses you and sitting with that confusion until it begins to reveal its secrets. It is the philosophical practice of Socratic ignorance, the wisdom of knowing that you do not know. This is anathema to a culture that rewards certainty and punishes doubt. To publicly say, "I don't know," or "it's more complicated than that," is a revolutionary act. It is to reject the prepackaged conclusion and undertake the messy, unprofitable, and profoundly human work of thinking for yourself. Finally, you must engage in the radical act of meaning-making. The hedonic treadmill is designed to keep you chasing pleasure to avoid the question of purpose. The rebellion is to step off the treadmill entirely and ask the terrifying, magnificent question: what is this all for? Not in a grand, cosmic sense, but in the granular reality of your daily life. What is the meaning of this conversation? This walk, this moment of silence? The systems that love stupidity thrive on your existential vacuum. A person without a deep, self-generated sense of purpose is a hollow vessel waiting to be filled with someone else's agenda, someone else's product, someone else's enemy. To define your own meaning is to build an internal citadel that no algorithm can breach. It is to find your why, as Nietzsche said, so you can bear almost any how. This meaning cannot be found in a feed or a self-help book. It is forged in the choices you make when no one is watching, in the integrity you hold when it is inconvenient, in the love you offer when it is not returned, in the work you do for its own sake, not for the applause. The rebellion, then, is not an external battle. It is an internal insurrection. It is fought in the quiet moments when you choose a book over a reel, when you sustain a thought for more than 60 seconds, when you tolerate the anxiety of not having an immediate opinion, when you choose a difficult truth over a comfortable lie. It is a daily, hourly practice of saying no to the 1,000 tiny invitations to stupidity, so you can have the capacity to say a full-throated, conscious yes to the one thing that truly matters. This is how you reclaim your mind. This is how you cease to be a passive consumer of your own dilution and become the active author of your own depth. But to understand the full power of this rebellion, you must see it not as a struggle, but as a homecoming to the most profound truth of your own existence. The rebellion, for all its necessity, can still be framed as a war, a struggle of you against the world. But this final realization, the ultimate truth that recontextualizes everything, is that the very idea of this separation is the root of the illusion. The world that loves stupidity is not an external monster you must slay. It is a reflection, It is the sum total of billions of individual abdications of consciousness, a collective echo of the private thought, "This is too hard." The most powerful realization is this: the cult of stupidity is a ghost. It has no substance, no central committee, no headquarters. It persists only because we, moment by moment, choose to feed it with our attention, our fear, and our longing for ease. It is a void, and it can only exist by convincing you to hollow yourself out to fill it. This is not a call for blame, but for a staggering, almost cosmic level of responsibility. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre declared that man is condemned to be free. We are thrown into existence without a preordained purpose, and we are utterly responsible for forging that purpose through our choices. The cult of stupidity is the ultimate expression of what Sartre called bad faith, the lie we tell ourselves to escape this terrifying freedom. We pretend we have no choice, that the algorithms are too powerful, the culture is too corrupt, the thinking is too hard. We flee from the weight of our own sovereignty into the waiting, open arms of intellectual serfdom. We choose to be slaves because it is easier than bearing the burden of being gods. When you truly internalize this, the entire dynamic shifts. You are no longer a victim fighting a system. You are a conscious participant in a collective dream, and you have just realized you are dreaming. The goal is not to defeat the dream for everyone else. That is their responsibility, their own path to walk. The goal is to wake up yourself, and in doing so, you alter the dreamscape for everyone. This is the great, counterintuitive secret. The most profound impact you can have on a world addicted to stupidity is to become so fiercely, unapologetically, and intelligently yourself that your very presence becomes a quiet referendum on the poverty of the mainstream. Your cultivated depth, your capacity for nuanced conversation, your tolerance for ambiguity, your refusal to be outraged, these are not just personal virtues. They are political acts. They are philosophical statements. They are radiant embers in a world choosing a dim twilight. You become a living example of a different way to be human. You stop shouting at the darkness and simply light a candle. And in that light, others, squinting, may begin to recognize their own chains. This final realization is a homecoming to your own true nature. You are not a passive consumer. You are not a data point. You are not a node in a network. You are a locus of consciousness, a universe of perception capable of awe, of love, of reason, and of transcendent understanding. The cult of stupidity fears only one thing: a human being who has remembered this. A human being who has traded the cheap thrill of being right for the profound satisfaction of being connected. A human being who understands that thinking is not a means to an end, but a form of lovemaking with reality itself. So, what remains when you strip it all away? When you stop feeding the ghost, you are left with the raw, unmediated, and breathtakingly beautiful burden of your own existence. You are left with the silence, which is no longer empty, but fertile. You are left with the questions, which are no longer terrifying, but inviting. You are left with a single, enduring task: to meet the world with as much courage, integrity, and understanding as you can muster in that fleeting, precious moment. The world loves stupidity because it is safe, profitable, and controllable. But you are now inoculated. You have tasted the alternative. You know that the pain of thinking is the pain of growth, and the comfort of ignorance is the comfort of the grave. Do not rage against the dying of the light. That implies the light is external, and it is being extinguished. The truth is far more powerful. The light is internal. It is your attention. It is your consciousness. It is your choice. They can only kill it with your consent. So, do not give it. With every breath, with every choice of what to read, what to watch, what to think, you are casting a vote for the kind of world you want to live in, and the kind of being you wish to become. The rebellion was never about breaking out. It was about breaking in, into your own mind, into your own life, into the fierce, unquenchable, and ultimately triumphant fire of a consciousness that has chosen to wake up and to stay awake.